Boxes to builds, number 2 for 2023. A bread and butter move for most club makers and club fitters. Let's see what that is. Welcome back to the Big Golf Shop. Jim McCleary here, and this is the Big Golf channel where we do golf club repairs, golf club reviews, and golf club fittings, all so your scores can go low. If you would, like, subscribe, hit all that stuff across the bottom, and that way more of this information gets out into the YouTube universe. We also have a live stream on Mondays, 17:30, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We're talking about the same stuff. It's just one-on-one, you, me, and everybody else in the McGolf universe out there. Said it twice now. So we can talk about those 3 same topics, plus maybe a few other things. So, what are we doing? We are pulling steel, installing graphite. Now, I was given a set of, or sent a set of, Wilson CBs. All right, Wilson CBs. The Wilson CBs are one of my favorites. It is a classic player's cavity back. It is more towards the traditional loft, so for those of us with not the incredible swing speed, probably can jack the loft maybe 1.5 degrees to 2 and still make these things really, really work. They go from, at least that I'm aware of, from the 4 to the gap wedge, and in this particular instance we're just doing 4 through the pitch. Now, what we're being asked is to remove these brandy spanking new shafts and install these not brandy spanking new shafts. They are pulls from, and they're steel fibers, I-80s and Aerotex, and we're removing some dynamic gold R300s. So the difference here, what's the difference and why would we do something like that? All right, number one, we're probably removing steel. There's 2 reasons why you would remove steel. 1, it's too heavy. 2, it's a vibration maker versus a vibration dampener. Okay, so it could also be the wrong length, but that you can fix easily without having to take a shaft out. Why would you put in graphite? Well, number 1, and my favorite, is a ginormous vibration dampener. So if you've got arthritis, or if you've got joint pain, or up in here, that whole missed shot, or hit the ground before the ball, or any of that kind of stuff, sends a vibration right up through your hands, and it just tingles. Well, if you have a graphite, it reduces it. I won't say it goes away, but it reduces it significantly, okay, significantly. And that's it. And then the other one is, you can, if you're doing it right, you got your right weight, and with that weight comes a particular kind of flex. Now with the steel fiber in the 80s, you're right on that cusp, be going from, it's like an R plus per se, and depending on how it was trimmed, that it could be into the low S's. So that's what we're looking at, and that's what we're going to do. So there's no special tools in this particular video, so for those guys doing it at home, you can follow right along and we will take care of that. So what we're going to do, we're going to apply some heat and try not to damage the ferrule. That's going to be a new one. And then we are going to measure all our irons to make sure we don't have anything oddballish in a way of weights. And then we're going to go back and make sure that they actually fit into the heads, and see what we got to do to either the heads or the shafts in order to make sure that they fit. So let's go do that. All right, so we're going to take this thing apart, and what we obviously got to do with some heat. The question is, what kind of heat would you want to use to do this? I've heard anything from hair dryers. No. I've heard, even I've used it, is get a wok, fill it full of sand, just let it heat up nice and gentle so it doesn't hurt paint. That was back when paint was soft. I wouldn't recommend that anymore. And then the 3 most popular ones would be a heating gun, the one that tends to remove paint. And yeah, you can use that, except for it's a wide broadcast of heat, and you really, really run the risk of damaging maybe even a ferrule. And with this one, has a fake bore through on it, and it might melt that out, so we don't want to do that. The other 2 is propane and butane. Propane is a much bigger flame. Yes, it's a lot hotter. It would take a really short burst, but the control is still not there. And this is for what I'm trying to do, okay? In a lot of applications where you didn't have a bore through, or you're trying to save a ferrule, yeah, maybe you could use propane and get that, because it's very, very common. However, The Burnzomatic, that guy right there, that's common too at the local Lowe's, Home Depots, whatever you want to call it. So let's get this thing started. We're going to put about 25 seconds on 3 quadrants in order to make sure that we've got enough heat, just to show you. So this is basically what we need, and away we go. Okay, you could use gloves while doing this, particularly if you're not used to doing it, but you can touch it and feel it's going to be all right. There we go. A big turn. And out we go. Now, the real trick here is with these guys, because of that, I did not mess up the ferrule. Now, as I say, you can do that, but does it happen very often? No. I got to drill this thing out. Hold on. All right, now that you get them all, now you get them out, when you take a club head apart, the next most important thing to do is make sure the hosel is cleaned out. Now, in a lot of OEM cases, what they'll do is they'll drop the glue in and then swirl it around, or drop it in and then you swirl the shaft around. And what happens is that it creates like a well effect. Meaning that if this is the bottom of the hosel and they filled up this far, it'll coat the shaft as we want, but the remaining of it sits in the bottom. And you got to drill that out, because that's going to prevent you from getting into the bottom of the hosel. So a drill, a regular hand drill, corded drill, cordless drill, doesn't matter. The one that fits into the bottom, typically about a 5/16 works all the time. And then you got to clean it out. Now I've got one on a cordless drill, and it's a drill bitted brush. However, you could use smaller versions of the same thing, just like this, and crank it in there and get it off. A 3/8 inch would be way better and much more user friendly in this particular point. Golfworks has them. A lot of other golf components, supply companies have those brushes, and then you're good to go. Once they're clean, they're good to go. Now, to kind of give you an idea of what I'm cleaning out, I'll show you this. And again, after drilling, we get to see this, and that's just parts of it, and it's falling down on here, and as you can see, it's on the floor. So there's a significant amount of stuff that needs to come out in order to clean out the hosel. That's why I'm making such a big deal about this. All right, so the same thing we got to do. I got 3 more wedges. I'm going to do it the same process. Heat up 20 to 25 seconds in 3 quadrants and grip it. Now, what makes this so easy to do is the fact that there's actually a grip on the shaft. That grip gives you a lot, so you can really torque that thing down. If you don't, I would suggest maybe helping you out and putting it into a clamp. You can use just a regular shaft clamp and put it in a vise, speed clamp, whatever. Just something extra that has gripping action in order to do that. Because the shafts are slick and you really can't grab on them and then get them twisted off. If you can't, then I would suggest going to a shaft puller. So let me get these other 3 taken care of, and then we'll get back to the installing part. All right, so now we've got all the heads cleaned out. We're ready to rock and roll that. Now we've got the shafts. These shafts are pulls, and right now they look like they've been through the war. There's hair hanging off of them. There's little rings from where the original epoxy was. It's not clean. So we got to clean them. So the real question is, how do we clean them? Well, yes, you could sand them off right away, but I'm not a big fan of removing a lot of material from the tip if we don't have to. Now, this has what I would say they have an average amount of wall diameter. Now, if they had a bunch of wall diameter, like in some cases where the hole in the middle is very, very small, then I would consider shaping these maybe if we needed to. But right now, since we don't know what we're looking at, I'm going to just take this apart. So how do we do that? Heating a knife, right? Heating a knife. So you're like, Jim, you're gonna heat up the tip of a graphite shaft. Yes, I am. But I'm never going to let it set more than a second in one spot, and I'm probably not going to do more than 5 to 7 seconds total. So let's watch this guy go. And what I'm aiming for is this rim and just a little bit of this. So here we go. That's all you need. And then a nice sharp knife, a box knife, was much, much better in order to make this thing go. And what it does, it makes that glue really pliable in order to have it removed. All right, and then what the next thing is I like scraping it off. And again, as I'm scraping, I'm turning it. And I'm getting it all. Now you're like, well, why don't you go like this? Because this is the way you can gouge. All I'm literally doing is just scraping it. And once you get used to doing it, you can remove just the glue and get down to the naked shaft. Now what gives that away is your feel. This ought to be smooth. All right, this ought to be smooth. And it is. It's pretty doggone smooth. I'm kind of happy with it. Let's see if we can get something in there. There we go. I'm pretty happy with it. Now, if you had a more industrial touch to it, you could use the 1x42 belt, and you would just barely touch it in order to get this off. Now, I think I've got it pretty good. I'm going to do a test. Yep, not much changed. What I was looking for is a discoloration, because between the epoxy coating or the clear coat that's on the shaft versus this, I wanted to see whether or not I was making a difference, and I did not. Now here comes the moment of truth. Where'd the 5? Oh, here we go. All right, 5 iron, 5 iron. Do they fit? What's the odds? I'm going with no. And that's as far as it goes. So no, we don't. So why is that? Well, if we go to my measuring tool and I look at the 370, it fits in the 370 just fine. Okay, so this is a parallel tip. And I know enough about the Wilson product that is not. But we check it anyway. Fits in there like a glove. Like a glove. And it doesn't there. So now the choice is on. Okay? The choice is on. Can I form this, or do I ream this? And like I said before, if there was a whole lot more material in here, I would probably just shape this, make it fit, and move on. But what I'm looking for, what it comes down to, is structural integrity. When I do this one, I am removing, you go from 355 to 370. So a 0.015. That's not a whole lot when it comes to metal, but it's a whole lot when it comes to the tip of a graphite shaft. So this one loses. So we're going to go ream some ream some heads. Okay, reaming. Reaming, now this one is where you get into what kind of tool do you need? Well, you need a drill press to be sure. Are there hand reamers out there? Yes, and it makes it really, really hard. And I'm all about not having to work really, really hard. So this is what we're going to do. We have our head clamp. Get that from Golf Works. It's got a nice handle on it, and we secure it in there nice and tight. You get it, the key here. Now there's 2 different ways of doing it. The machinists are going to be screaming at me, like, why aren't you using oil? And there is cutting oil. And I do have cutting oil for those other instances where I'm not trying just to turn around and assemble. So what I end up doing, and it costs me a little bit, is that I get me a new one of these, about 3 a year I go through. And I know the machinists are screaming again that they would never go through that many in that period of time. Anyway, I get this thing set on the next to the slowest speed, and all I'm doing is I'm going straight to the bottom. So let's see what we can do. right, so instead of it being a taper down into the bottom of here, now it just made them parallel. And I know, how much did I remove? Probably in the realm of a gram or two, because I'm only removing the stuff that's in the bottom. The other thing that this serves is it really cleans out the hosel. So now I know I got something nice and neat, because there's no oil on this, there's no oil on this. I can go straight into the assembly. And that's why I do it like this. So let's finish this off. So that was reaming, and the thing is, both the Volkeys and the Wilsons are very, very soft. The forge obviously is soft. The Volkey wedges are not a forged wedge, but they use a soft steel, so it was really quite easy. And again, I'm only really taking out that much, the last 3/8 inch-ish of it. And when we went back and re-weighed them, literally less than 1 gram. So we're not impacting swing weight or how it's going to perform or any of that other kind of stuff. Now, when we went back and we, you saw me and I shaved the shafts and got them all nice and cleaned up. Except when we got down to the end, the very ends of them were all kind of rough as a cob. So what I did is I squared them all off again on my sander, and as you can tell, now it's black again as opposed to having a whole bunch of crud on it. So why did we go through all this trouble? We got to make sure that the hosel is the right size and it is clean. We got to make sure that the shaft is the right size and it is clean, when free from debris, okay? We get all the excess glue off, we get all and we need to have a surface that's kind of coarse. I will say rough, not coarse is a different term, but you needed to have it so that there is some ridges for the epoxy to grab to and adhere to, so that you have a good bond, okay? And so that's what we've done. I've test fitted every one of these things, and they're all working out pretty doggone good. Oh, as I say that, there we go. That's a good one for me. So now, what's the next step for me? All right, now the next concern here is that all of these but one still has the glue left in it. Now this presents a problem from a hydraulic point of view. The golfer wants to keep the grip. And you say, well, Jim, you could blow it off and put it on, except for they want to pay for that service. So now they're staying on. And that's what we're doing. So what I'm trying to do is loosen these up so that the air, and with the air, the rest of the remaining glue, so we'll hold it in place so it doesn't become a rattler. Now, how do we allow that to escape? Well, this is a star grip, so it was either done one of two ways. It was either blown on or there was some tape put on it and they did that. So what I'm going to do is, to ensure that we're good to go, so anyway, I'm punching these down in order to make sure that I'm poking a hole in the grip tape, all right, in order to make sure that happens. And they feel like they've been blown on because I'm not running into any resistance. And we're going to go with that. All right, so now if we have any air that needs to escape, it will. Okay, so now that's all that's left is picking out the proper ferrule and picking out and putting it together. So this is all about install. We're pulling out the other one, putting in the new one. And you saw what we had to go through in order to make that happen. That's the big deal about this. Now, For the Wilsons, we're picking out 5/8 inch 370s to give it that original look. I'm not going with the 3/4. I'm just not a fan. Outside of that, I'm just not a fan. All right, now in the Titleist one, Titleist has a specific ferrule. This has a shoulder, that has a shoulder. Together they go and they make a really cool looking thing. So it will be original for that. Now, how do you go, like, Jim, how do you know what you need when you go do that? Well, it's a common sense play. If you want to know the kind of ferrule that you're looking for and you want to see if it's a specialty ferrule, go to the supply companies. Like, we'll use GolfWorks because that's who I use. And go to the ferrules and look and see where the specialty ferrules are at. You know, PXG, Ping, TaylorMade, Callaway, you know, Titleist. They all have their special ferrules, and if it's on the project you're looking for, then I would suggest going to go get those. Okay, particularly if you're using graphite, because graphite, I like, you know, having those mechanical bonds be tight. I don't want them jiggling around so that it turns into a saw. Now, if it was on steel, you'd probably get away with it as sort. All right, so that's what it is. We're going to glue them together. We're going to finish the ferrules, which is a whole nother project altogether, and we'll show you how they turned out when we're all done. Welcome back to day 2. The graphite shafts have been put into the Wilson CBs and some of the Volkey Wedges. And since this was just talking about installs, you know, it's all about gluing. Once we ream them out, they fit really, really well, and it's just a matter of getting the ferrules to fit. Now, what takes that? Well, in the Wilsons, they really don't take anything that has the shoulder, although there is a little notch in there. But the Volkeys do. Now, Volkeys, when you go to buy these things, would typically come in a 355 tip, but we made them 370. So we had to do some modifications to make sure that the collar was taken care of when we still put in the ferrules that look like the rest of the set, so everything looked uniform. Okay. So what you're seeing now is this is the Wilson CB4s, 4 through the pitch and wedge, with the new ferrules, the steel fiber shafts, and then it's going to have the star grips. Now, the star grips were kind of nasty, and we cleaned them up, and they should be good to go. The other part is we have the Volkeys, and they now have the same kind of ferrules. It looks very, very uniform, and the same shafts, obviously, and the same grips. So that's what's it. So what do we want? What do we caps up? Let's start that one over. So what do we really want to get out of this? Number one, when taking apart a steel shaft, you can usually just use heat on the hosel as long as you've got the grip on the end, and that allows you to apply a sideways torque in order to break the epoxy bond. Now, in this particular instance, about 1 minute to 1:20 minutes is a good number in order to get it so you don't have to work as hard. You got to see where I made the ferrule survive. So you can do that with the butane torch. Okay, you can do it. With the other ones, not so much. All right, and then the installation. The installation of graphite, you have to be kind of particular because graphite's just not nearly as tough as steel. But you don't want to create any shear points. You want to make sure everything's clean. You want to make sure everything fits very, very well, which is the same for steel shafts, but when it comes to graphite, you just want to be a little bit better. Cleaning the edges, if you're using these used shafts, you just want to scrape it off so you don't make the diameter of the tip smaller. That's the idea. Don't make the diameter of the tip smaller. Just scrape the glue off, make sure that's all you're taking off, and that way you get a good fit when it goes back on. And that's where it's at. Now, in this particular instance, he wanted to keep the grips on. He wanted the links what they were at the install. So did I do frequency matching or any swing weighting? No, I did not, because that was the way they were going to go, and they did come out long. So they were all going to be heavy. In fact, I had one that weighed into the D7, and the lowest one was, E7, and the lowest one was D9. So that's what you get when they're longer. I mean, that's just what it is. So if you got any more questions on it, just put them down in the show notes, and we'll try our best to get you an answer. Don't forget our live stream, 17:30, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, where we talk about this same stuff. You really enjoy it. Like and subscribe. And as always, let's see your scores. Go low.